Elias's alchemy shop was tucked away on the narrowest, quirkiest street in the city, a stretch that boasted a collection of colorful, eccentric storefronts ranging from antique libraries to tea shops that claimed to read your fortune in every cup. His shop, though officially called Elias's Emporium of Alchemical Wonders, had gained another name among locals, the Heartmender's Haven. It wasn't because Elias looked particularly romantic or saintly. In fact, with his mop of perpetually messy hair and robes that seemed like they'd seen the last 3 centuries, he appeared closer to an eccentric librarian who might get lost in his own stacks. But it was what he sold that made people flock to his shop, and each morning, as he swept the shop floor and dusted bottles of the strangest concoctions, he prepared himself to face the various heartaches that would inevitably trickle in. One morning, as Elias squinted against the sun streaming through his shop's windows, a woman stood before him, eyeing the shelves with a mixture of skepticism and intrigue. She wore a leather jacket and jeans, her arms crossed as she glanced over the bottles with names like Tincture of Tranquility and Elixir of Honest Tears. She gave Elias a once-over and smirked. "So, you're the guy who fixes broken hearts, huh?" "Well," Elias replied with a lopsided grin, rubbing his hands together, "I like to think of myself more as a heart mechanic. You bring me the parts, I'll do the tuning." The woman snorted but seemed intrigued enough to stay. "What's that one?" she asked, pointing to a deep purple vial labeled Extract of Forgotten Sorrows. "Ah, good choice," Elias said, scooping the bottle off the shelf. "This particular potion forces you to relive the funniest moments with your ex, makes people realize they're still allowed to laugh about love, even if it hurts." The woman raised an eyebrow. "Laugh? After what I went through?" "Only one way to find out," Elias replied with a wink, handing her the vial. She eyed it suspiciously, but with a grumble and a mutter about giving it a shot, she swallowed the potion in one quick gulp. For a moment, she just blinked at him, unimpressed. But suddenly, her eyes grew wide, and her mouth twisted into a grin that turned into a giggle. She let out a burst of laughter, clutching her sides. "Oh my God," she gasped between laughs, "I forgot about the time he got his head stuck in the window trying to impress me by singing." Elias grinned, watching as the laughter spilled out of her, the weight in her shoulders easing just a bit. "Sometimes, the heart just needs a reminder that even sorrow has a funny side," he said as she continued laughing, wiping tears from her eyes. "Thank you," she managed between giggles. She looked a bit lighter, like some invisible burden had been loosened from her chest. With a smile and a quick wave, she exited the shop. Elias chuckled, returning the potion bottle to the shelf. His methods might have seemed a bit unconventional, but he had spent years developing each potion, each elixir, and each brew with one goal in mind: to help people face the memories that haunted them, laugh at the past, and hopefully, heal. The bell above the door tinkled, signaling another customer. A short, wiry man with glasses that seemed too big for his face ambled in, glancing around nervously. Elias recognized him as Reuben, his old friend and occasional source of comic relief. "Reuben," Elias said, grinning, "looking for an elixir to get over your last stand-up routine? I've got just the thing." Reuben rolled his eyes. "Hilarious, Eli. No, I actually came here to check on you. People say you're still healing everyone else's heart but your own." Elias brushed off Reuben's words with a laugh, gesturing to the shelves. "I've got plenty of potions on hand, just in case I need them. But honestly, who has the time?" Reuben narrowed his eyes. "It's been 10 years since she passed, Eli. How long are you gonna keep bottling up your own grief while you're handing out laughter in a bottle to everyone else?" Elias forced a smile, feeling a familiar pang in his chest. Look, Reuben, it's my job. I fix other people's hearts because, well, mine's a bit of a lost cause. Reuben sighed, shaking his head. You're like a carpenter with a broken chair who'd rather sell new chairs than fix his own. Elias laughed, brushing him off, but the words stuck. Reuben had always been too sharp, and deep down, Elias knew there was truth to his friend's concern. But he pushed it aside. He had patients to tend to, and that day's newest case came bursting through the door in the form of a young woman with fierce determination and a guarded expression. She strode up to the counter, her gaze unwavering. I heard you can fix broken hearts. Elias gave her his best welcoming smile. That's what they say. And what kind of mending are we talking about today? Her arms were crossed tightly over her chest, a look of defiance in her eyes. I don't actually believe in any of this, whatever you're doing here. I'm here because I lost someone, and apparently, your potions are supposed to help. But I'm telling you right now, nothing can fix me. Elias gave her a nod, completely unfazed. Everyone says that. But you'd be surprised. He scanned the shelves thoughtfully, tapping his chin. Let's try something simple, he said, grabbing a shimmering, silvery bottle labeled Essence of Bravery. What's that supposed to do? She asked, eyeing the bottle as though it might bite. Bravery, Elias replied, offering her the vial. It'll make you face the one memory you're most afraid of. You'd be amazed at the kind of strength you can find in yourself when you're not hiding from it. She stared at the bottle, her fingers hovering over it. Finally, she took it, hesitating for a moment before drinking. Her face scrunched, the taste bitter, but her gaze became distant as if she were seeing something only she could. The memory hit her hard. Elias could see it in her eyes. She blinked, her face softening, vulnerability creeping into her expression. I never got to say goodbye to him, she whispered. He was there, and then he wasn't. And I thought that maybe if I pretended he'd just gone away, it would hurt less. But it doesn't. Elias nodded, offering her a gentle smile. Sometimes, bravery isn't about letting go. It's about holding on to what we can't change and making peace with it. The woman looked at him, her fierce exterior cracked, exposing the heartache she'd tried so hard to hide. She gave him a small, grateful smile before she left, leaving Elias with the familiar weight in his chest. Each person he helped, every soul he mended, reminded him of his own unhealed wounds. After the shop cleared out, Elias found himself staring at a dusty, forgotten potion at the back of the shelf. It was one he'd made long ago, an elixir he'd never tried himself. It was called Remembrance, a potion that would force him to confront the grief he had buried for years. He'd concocted it in the wake of his own heartbreak, but he'd never been able to bring himself to take it. He hesitated, the memory of his last customer's words echoing in his mind. With a sigh, he reached for the bottle, his fingers trembling. He knew that his heart had been broken a long time ago, and though he'd devoted his life to healing others, his own heartache had only deepened over the years. He hadn't been brave enough to face it, until now. As he uncorked the vial, a faint, bittersweet aroma wafted up, bringing with it a flood of memories. Taking a deep breath, he downed the potion in one gulp. For a moment, nothing happened. But then the shop faded around him, and he was back in that room, in the hospital, where he had watched her last breaths fade away. She had been the light of his life, his anchor, his inspiration. He could still see the faint smile she had given him, the way her hand had squeezed his even in her final moments. The pain hit him like a storm, fierce and unrelenting, and he felt the years of grief swell up, threatening to drown him. Tears streamed down his face as he clutched his chest, the agony of her loss finally surfacing after all this time. He sobbed, the sound raw and broken, echoing through the empty shop, but then, as the pain ebbed, he felt something else, a warmth, a memory. She was smiling at him, laughing, her eyes bright with life and love. And in that moment, he remembered something he had forgotten in his years of grief. She had wanted him to be happy. She had wanted him to live fully, to love, to laugh. Slowly, as the memory faded, Elias opened his eyes, feeling a strange lightness in his chest. The pain was still there, but it no longer felt like a weight he had to carry alone. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of peace, a gentle warmth that seemed to settle over him like a soft embrace. The bell above the door jingled, startling him out of his reverie. He wiped his eyes, clearing his throat as Reuben strolled in, his usual smirk softening when he saw Elias's tear-streaked face. "Eli, are you?" Elias managed a watery smile. "Yeah, Reuben. I think I'm finally okay." Reuben gave him a gentle pat on the shoulder. "Took you long enough. Now, maybe you can stop being a martyr and let someone else help you for a change." Elias chuckled, the sound lighter than it had been in years. "Maybe. But I think I've still got a bit of heart mending left in me." With that, he turned back to his shelves, rearranging bottles with a renewed sense of purpose. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, he felt ready to face it, one broken heart at a time. A few weeks passed, and Elias found himself falling into a new rhythm. The pain he had carried for years was no longer an anchor weighing him down. Instead, it was like a gentle hum, a reminder of love lost, but also of love lived. He felt lighter, more at peace, and it even surprised him how his sessions with customers seemed to deepen as a result. His heart, freshly mended, had found space to hold the sorrow of others more fully. One crisp autumn afternoon, Elias was just finishing the day's closing ritual when the shop door creaked open, the bell giving a soft, almost reluctant jingle. In walked a young woman with wild, curly hair and a piercing gaze. She wore an oversized scarf that looked like it could double as a blanket, and her eyes darted around the room, cautious yet curious. "Hi," she said, her voice softer than her presence suggested. "Are you the heart guy?" Elias grinned. "Depends. If you're looking for repairs, I might be your guy." She didn't laugh, her expression serious. I'm Lila. People told me about you. They said you helped them, really helped them, and I need some help." Elias nodded, gesturing for her to come closer. "That's what I'm here for, Lila. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what's weighing you down?" She fidgeted, twisting the ends of her scarf. "It's hard to put into words. I lost someone I cared about. And I keep trying to push it away, to just keep moving forward. But it's like it's haunting me. Every time I close my eyes, it's there. This void." Elias listened, feeling the familiar pang of empathy. He'd seen this look before in countless faces, the look of someone standing on the edge of their own heartache, afraid to take that final step into the depths. "All right, Lila," he said gently. "I think I might have just the thing. But it won't be easy." She nodded, her jaw set. "I didn't come here for easy." With a faint smile, Elias turned to the shelves, scanning until his eyes landed on a small, dark vial. "This," he said, holding up the bottle, "is essence of true reflection. It'll take you to the place where you're most afraid to go. You'll face the memories you've been trying to hide from. But you'll come out of it knowing something true about yourself, and maybe a bit lighter." Lila hesitated, staring at the vial as if it might explode. "And what if I don't want to see what's there? Elias's smile softened. Sometimes, the things we don't want to face are exactly what we need to heal. I promise, you'll be safe here. She took a deep breath, her fingers trembling as she reached for the vial. For a moment, she closed her eyes, steeling herself. Then, with a determined gulp, she downed the potion, wincing at the bitter taste, her eyes glazed over as the potion took effect. Elias watched as her expression shifted from fear to sorrow, her brows knitting together as memories unfolded before her. She was seeing something only she could see, reliving a moment that had imprinted itself on her heart. After a few minutes, a tear slid down her cheek. She sniffled, biting her lip as more tears followed, her hands clenching and unclenching at her sides. Then, slowly, a small, bittersweet smile crept onto her face. When her gaze refocused, she looked up at Elias, her expression soft, vulnerable. I didn't realize how much I'd been holding on to. It's like I couldn't let go because I was afraid it would mean forgetting him. But he wouldn't want that for me. He'd want me to live, to be happy. Elias nodded, understanding all too well. Sometimes, the hardest part of healing is giving ourselves permission to remember without clinging. Love isn't meant to trap us, it's meant to set us free. Lila exhaled, a deep, relieved sigh, as if a burden had lifted. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with gratitude. As she left, Elias felt a quiet satisfaction settle over him. Helping her, and others like her, felt like a way of honoring his own journey. And, maybe, each person who left a bit lighter took a piece of his own sorrow with them, leaving him that much more healed. The shop had quieted down again, and Elias was tidying up when Reuben strolled in, whistling a tune that was remarkably off-key. He took one look at Elias's satisfied expression and smirked. So, Reuben said, leaning against the counter, still playing Heart Doctor? Elias chuckled. Isn't that what I've always done? Sure, Reuben replied with a shrug, but something's different now. You're not as much of a mess as you used to be. Elias raised an eyebrow. Thanks, I think. Reuben laughed, slapping him on the shoulder. I'm serious. Ever since you took that potion, you've been different. Like you're finally practicing what you preach. Elias shrugged, though he knew his friend was right. Maybe I just needed to remember that healing isn't a one-time thing. It's ongoing. Reuben nodded thoughtfully, a rare expression of seriousness crossing his face. You're finally living, Eli. And that's a good thing. The bell above the door tinkled again, and a familiar face walked in, Clara, the artist he'd helped weeks ago. Her cheeks were flushed with excitement, her eyes bright. Elias, she exclaimed, practically bouncing with enthusiasm. I wanted to show you something. She held up a small canvas, a beautiful painting of a heart. But it wasn't just any heart. It was cracked, stitched together with vibrant threads that glowed with a strange, ethereal light. It was whole, but its scars were visible, a testament to its resilience. This, Clara said, this is what you helped me create. I thought, maybe I'd never paint again. But you helped me remember that there's beauty in the brokenness. Thank you. Elias stared at the painting, his heart swelling. Clara, that's incredible. You've captured something truly special. She grinned, her eyes glistening. I couldn't have done it without you. As she left, Reuben gave Elias a knowing look. See? You're making more of a difference than you even realize. Elias nodded, humbled by the thought. He had spent years in grief, thinking his own heart was beyond repair. But now, he saw that healing wasn't just about mending, it was about transforming, finding new purpose and beauty in the scars, and so, day by day, Elias continued his work. Each person who entered his shop left a little lighter, a little braver, each one carrying a small piece of his story with them. One evening, as he closed up the shop, he paused to look at his reflection in the glass. He saw a man who had been broken and mended, who had known deep love and deeper loss, and who had learned that healing was a journey he would walk for the rest of his life. With a final glance around, he locked the door, feeling the warmth of his shop settle around him like an embrace. And as he walked home, he realized he was no longer haunted by his grief. Instead, he carried it with him like a quiet companion, a reminder of a love that had shaped him, healed him, and, in the end, set him free. The end.